I said no, hey, yeah. Hey, hey, yeah. I said no, hey,
Hi, my name
yeah.
is Matt Gresick. Welcome to another episode in our second
Well,
season of
come
Brick and
on,
Mortar,
everybody,
Education from
take
the
it.
Inside Out, and forever my super host.
I'm Eric Ebersole. Marked myself as a public school teacher first, but in a later life, I became a state legislator where I involved myself heavily in issues of education. And the theme of the second season is, leadership in education. We're going to bring in some real heavy hitters in the education policy world. And today we have with us a formative friend of mine in my second life, Paul Lemle. And
El Presidente Paul Lemle, who is intertangled with both our paths in educational leadership, but just an awesome guest. We're excited to have him and dig into this work that's going to help kids, our profession, and our communities grow.
Maryland State
So,
Education Association is the collective bargaining agent, the overseer of the collective bargaining agencies across the state for teachers. I always claim MSEA is a unique union, if you'll use the term, although it's not entirely accurate, but we'll call it that. It's a unique union in that it not only serves the people who are members of the union, but it serves and works for the people that those members work for, being students in this case. And the good for the teachers is the good for the students. And I'm always proud to have been a member and to call them friends. So let's get started. Paul, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. Give us a little background on yourself. And, we'll ask you questions about what's important to you later, but just tell us about yourself.
Sure. Who am I? So most recently, I'm a social studies teacher. I worked at Reservoir High in Howard
ooh,
County, and I come to social studies via special education. That's how I got my start in this world. And I come to special education from the entry point in grad school of studying education for incarcerated kids. And this was in response to a Justice Department lawsuit against the state of Louisiana, which at the time was denying students a free and appropriate education by not providing special education services when kids were incarcerated. Their rights don't to an education don't end when they do something wrong. Um, so that's me in basics. I'm a dad. I've got three boys that are 15, 18, 19. I'm married to a civilian Department of Defense employee, like so many other people here in Central Maryland. And I'm just a generally good human, y'all.
Well, you're not
My
going to get
my
any argument from present company on that.
my parents are from the New Orleans area, and that's where my brother and sister still live. My sister's an educator in Louisiana. Um, and if you didn't know it, she just got access to the Social Security system because of work that we did at the national level to repeal a government pension offset that meant so many educators in states like Louisiana are not allowed to use the Social Security system.
Yeah.
Um,
As a
but
retired
that's
teacher, thank you. I mean, I don't think that it's important. I mean,
Yeah, it's not just teachers, but many government employees at all levels in many states, some like 13, 14 states were affected directly. And, if you move to Florida or something, it would affect you that way.
So real quick, full disclosure, Paul was also president of the Howard County Education Association
It
when
was.
this host right here decided he would test the waters and see if he could get elected to public office. And Paul was, um, he was a great guide in the early going of all that and an encourager also. So he gets at least partial, if not a good deal of the credit for me being where I am today. But I just wanted you to know who he is and why, I shed a tear every time I see him. But
Well, I mean, the selfishly, when you called me, I thought, wow, do we have the political power to put a teacher in the Maryland General Assembly? Um, and I thought the answer was yes. But we certainly needed a candidate.
Well, then
So,
you met me and you thought maybe not, right?
this guy. Couldn't we have had a young Barack Obama?
Right, exactly.
Instead, we got this crotchety math teacher. No,
Curmudgeon,
it
I think
wasn't
is the word I'm looking for. There you go.
curmudgeonly, right? As we age into it.
Yes, indeed.
No, it was really cool to get that call, because as you know, John Miller and Kelly Midgley both said we love this guy, and they don't agree on things.
I know.
But it was cool to get that call too, for the aforementioned reasons about our political aspirations, but B, just because the world of politics is so dominated by lawyers, and there's they have to ask a teacher, hey, what does a free and appropriate education mean? Do you actually have to grade all your students' work? Well, hell yeah, we do.
Oh, yeah.
But to have you in the General Assembly meant that we didn't have to do so much educating. Well, we still do, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
We still do.
Yeah, we do. It's an awesome and heavy responsibility, but it's a fun one too. I like being a champion for teachers. But enough about me. Matt, you got a question?
I'll get the next one.
Yeah.
Point of that whole conversation: educators have power. Realize your power out there if you're listening and you're an educator. So the next question: story time. You're a social studies teacher here, and I think the good delegate tells a pretty mean story at times too. But what's your most difficult, challenging, funniest, or most rewarding moment in education? In other words, what event sticks out your memory most as educator? I know you are a teacher at heart, and I have a feeling I probably know the story you're going to say, but I'm anxious to hear it.
I don't know what story I'm going to say, Matt. There's so much, right? When you have a long career in education, you've been involved in so many things, and I've had a student be murdered, and ironically, that happened more than once. And I had a colleague at Wild Lake be murdered. I'd given a young teacher my lesson plans for a class called Law and the Citizen. When I left Wild Lake and became Howard County Education Association president, here, Laura, take my stuff. And 6 years later, her boyfriend shot her.
The Netflix special.
Yeah. But I guess to me, I sort of focus on the recent, and I'll focus on the positive to the for your story here. I had students at Reservoir High approach me in 2022 about moderating the Muslim Student Association. I am not a Muslim. I'm not even religious. And it wasn't the first time I had a request from somebody whose community I was not a member of. When I was at Wild Lake, students approached me to be the first sponsor of what they called a gay-straight alliance at the time, now more gender sexuality alliance or something like that. But a student approached me and said, hey, we need a sponsor. Will you moderate this organization? Will you sponsor it? And I said, respectfully, you're asking the wrong person. I don't have knowledge of the culture. I don't know if I can really help you. And they said, we don't need your help in that way. You make students feel safe. We need you to protect us. And this was a year before the Israel-Palestine Hamas war started. So they didn't feel safe then. And the invitation to do that was humbling for me. And I said, look, I will try to help you. I'll do the best I can. And the time spent with those students, doing everything from just being there when they were practicing their henna on each other for fundraisers, to dealing with the aforementioned war and their efforts to exercise their free speech rights in school, helping them interact with principals and the superintendent of schools in Howard, was you asked about rewarding experiences. We don't get paid for that stuff. And there's no stipend. There's no extra money. Nobody pins a medal on your chest, and certainly you don't get rich doing it. But I would do it again in a heartbeat. I would have given them more time than required, and it was just one of the best experiences of my professional life. And as so often is the case, I learned a lot more in that experience than they did, right? I would love to believe that I teach my students more than they teach me, but I'm going to go with I've been the beneficiary of this relationship so much that anyway, that was true for them.
Paul, one of the things that is a common thread when we ask people in education for a story like this, it's always something they're doing beyond their normal responsibilities, where they find that they get so much enrichment, which is why we do it, because students want to trust you, and many times with people like you and me and Matt, they can trust you. We work hard because we want them to trust us. And that's a tremendous level of trust that in that story you tell. But at the same time, I have to point out that these are things we do because we care. I mean, we really want that. And many of the stories when we ask people that question have to do with them going on overnights and sponsoring clubs and things. And so it's awesome, really is.
Thank you. And let me just very mildly disagree with the premise of that in a way. I do that stuff intentionally to be a better teacher, to have relationships with students so that when I go to teach, that sort of bland unit on the executive power of the presidency. And some of our examples are about the war on terror. And, we go through this exercise of the Guantanamo cases against, the Bush administration's detention of suspected terrorists. And then we look at President Obama's ordering drone strikes on, again, suspected terrorists, but in some cases, American citizens. And so we're asking, how much power should the president have? What are the checks? All that stuff. I have students, in this instance, Muslim students, but you can imagine this coming from anyone, who are comfortable enough to say, hey, Mr. Lemle, why are we using this example? Why can't we talk about this with some other president and some other power? Right? We can do Roosevelt and World War II Japanese internment. But my Muslim students are comfortable enough to say to me, hey, why this? And then we're in a much wider discussion, right? Hey, why do you think a textbook author picks this? Why does your county pick this? Why don't teachers decide what to teach? It's our job to do the how. And it's enriching professionally. And yeah, I don't get paid for it. That's what I said. And I agree with that part of it. But I am intentional in fighting a long game. And I will teach a kid on the bus to a field trip, and I'll teach them if I run into them in the mall. I don't care. I'm going at you day in and day out, and I intend for us both to be better off.
So, I'm going to say this about this show and about the leadership of MSEA. I'm a little bothered by the lack of diversity. We have all social studies teachers. Okay.
It's a problem.
I know it's a problem. I'm a math teacher, and I feel a little,
of state presidents in the NEA, there are 8 new state presidents, and at least 6 of them are social studies teachers.
I got to tell
I
you,
don't know about our colleague in Oklahoma.
the word insidious comes to mind. Okay, that's all.
I've been thinking about this, delegate and friend who is a colleague, a social studies teacher. Social studies teachers get interested in this work. We can't help it. It's sort of in our DNA. And suddenly we're asking the question like, wait a minute, I can lobby, but I don't, I can influence elections. I can do that stuff for real.
Right.
And
well, that's I real quickly, when people say, find out I was a teacher, because I'm in serving in government, they always say, so was it social studies? It's like, no, we're smart. Math teachers are smart and thoughtful and, questioning too. We know how to
we need more math teachers. And
we always need more math. That's why I was one. It was easy to get a job. No, I hope that's not true. All
right. Question 3. What role do teacher unions like the MSEA play in addressing the shortage of educators and improving working conditions?
No one but us. I mean, the ignorance about what we do is so profound that we are the only messengers who can really explain to decision makers what's going on in the classroom. And I don't care if they were a teacher 800 years ago, or some superintendent believes that they still know. They don't. Oh my God, they don't. Even the good delegate, right? You stopped teaching before the pandemic.
Yeah, the farther away, the more years I'm away from it, the thinner that piece of taffy stretches for me. No question.
Yeah, and teaching is teaching. Nothing's changed, and a lot has changed, right? I can't stand it when people say, "Oh, the kids today are so different." No, no. Or the education system is so different. It isn't. However, do you know, if you're a superintendent of schools, what it's like to try to pry the cell phone out of the hands of a middle schooler? You don't. Do you know what it's like to deal with kids who are non-binary? You don't. No one. I didn't teach a single kid who identified as non-binary in my first career up to 2017, up to 2011. And in my second career teaching after being union president, I bet I had half a dozen. The world is different. Anyway, you asked about what we do, why we do it, why we're necessary. It's absolutely our mission to educate the public on education. It's our mission to make sure it's a viable career. It's our mission to get people into this viable career, because there's really no actual educator recruitment anywhere. We pay a little lip service to sending a person to a job fair to college every now and then. But the truth is, there is no systemic effort to bring people into this profession. There's no systemic effort to make the job better, except for the unions. And I definitely don't reject the word. We're a union,
right?
And we're a union because we do collective bargaining. We advocate for our members, for them to have better pay, better working conditions, better benefits, better retirements. And that's what unions do. And that's what we are. I don't know if people want to use other words in laws or statutes or codes or regulations.
I have a little legalese in my head since I've done this.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
No, I am. It's a union. You win.
Members sometimes will say, hey, we're not a union because we can't strike. The old answer to that question was, we don't strike because of Maryland law, but we're still a union, or, you can call us a professional association. I don't really care. The new answer to that question is, why can't we strike? I would posit that any worker could withhold their labor from their employer if they wanted. They could organize to do that. It's my position that we could do that. And I think it's a tool that we could use in really extreme threat situations. You know, if, for instance, there were attacks on us from the Trump administration, right? A national right to work initiative that would bar unions from existing or collecting dues or any of those things. I think a strike would be an answer that we could talk about.
We even did job actions. I mean, and they were effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where we worked to rule. And that shook people up pretty good when we weren't grading outside of school, because all the things that you talked about, the extra things that we talked about earlier that teachers do, people take those for granted, and we're happy to do them. But it's another way of making sure that people understand where we are and what we need.
Absolutely. So, you know, it's our mission to make sure people know that, from the man or woman on the street to the media to our bosses. We sometimes have the expression that we teach them how to do their jobs, how to treat people with respect, and how to negotiate. So no one will lobby for kids unless we do it, and certainly no one will lobby for us unless we do it.
Oh, hey, Matt. I think I hear a phone call coming in. Yep, there it is. Hold on, let's pick up. Hello,
This
caller.
show has listeners?
Yeah, we do. We have a huge live audience out there. Okay.
Dozens and dozens of people.
Yes,
Measure the
indeed. Dozens. Hey, caller, how are you today?
Good. This is John from Catonsville. Huge fan of the podcast.
Oh, John, thanks, man. It's great to hear from you. Catonsville, it's a great town in Maryland. I know some people who live there, actually. That's
I've heard
great.
of it.
Yeah, I've heard of it too. So, John, we have Paul Lemle on, president of MSEA. As you know, do you have a question for him?
Yeah. So basically, the issue of adequate planning time and work conditions has been a growing concern. So my question is, how does the balance between teaching and planning times affect teachers' ability to do their jobs effectively, and affect the ability to attract people to the profession? And what can we change to improve on this particular subject?
As ever, I wish we were video, because you'd see me shaking my head in awe of another caller who has a question. I don't know how they do it. It's almost the exact thing I would have wanted to ask if I could have formulated myself. John, thank you so much. Listen in, and Paul, give us an answer to that question.
Yeah, I don't know if John really cares about his own kids in a school, or if he's an educator, but that's a great question. So I think we need to rebrand planning time. And I think we need to rebrand collaborative time, which is the language in the blueprint for Maryland's future. And we can strike the adjectives. Let's just call it time. So to John, I would say, hey, John, I usually teach about 120 students, and that is down from the 150 or 160 of years past. But as a Howard County social studies teacher, I would have typically 120 kids. And so let me just look at their work for 3 minutes each week. I'm only giving it 180 seconds per kid. Well, unfortunately, I have 120 students. We're up to 360 minutes. Eric's a math teacher. That's 6 hours, y'all. And I gave each kid 3 minutes.
Great. That's great on the spot computation there, I have to tell you.
I've been telling this story a while. Anyway, I'm also, with my time, I'm going to plan for 20 meetings. Each of those meetings is about 45 minutes long. And I'm only given 1 hour per class per week, right? I'm only going to plan for 1 hour, and I teach 3 different classes. So I'm up to 9 hours now. I've planned now, you heard me, for 20 hours of classroom instruction in 3 hours. I'm a veteran. I know what I'm doing. I have lessons, but I still need to update them. I still need to make the copies. I still need to make sure all those links still work. It's going to take me about 3 hours. I haven't made the first phone call yet to a family. I haven't gone to the first IEP meeting or 504 meeting. Those are, designed to make sure kids get the individualized services they need. I haven't had written the first recommendation. I think I do about 50 of those in a year. They're for admissions to schools, scholarships, jobs, internships, even to be a member of the Student Government Association or whatever. I think I write about 50 of those a year. And so let's just say one a week, and I'm only giving it 10 minutes. That's, 50 times 10 minutes. That's another 500 minutes. Anyway, the short answer, I don't give short answers, but the short answer is the educator that you really want has time to do the job. Like I said, I'm a veteran. I'm good at it. I can do some of these things quickly. But say I want to get creative, say like Mr. Gresick, I want to take kids on a meaningful field trip to 5 faith-based organizations, and I'm going to interface with bus companies who don't call me back.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to take them on a less meaningful field trip to Hershey Park. It's still going to eat my time. And I haven't even mentioned working with my colleagues. I worked with one of my colleagues to get a national board certification. And I've heard the estimate of 2 hours per day for that. It didn't take me that long. But it's a ton of work. It takes a ton of time. I didn't mention collaborating with our administration. Hey, Paul, will you help us build conference schedules? Because we want to make sure we honor the negotiated agreement. Well, of course, I want to help you do that. It takes time. Every single thing that we do that helps your kids, it's time and effort. And the more time we can give it, just the better the outcomes. So, I didn't get to memorizing the pronunciation of 200 students' names. So we can have a graduation that honors them appropriately. And there's 50 things that I didn't mention, all of which take time. So the goal of the blueprint is to have us teaching 60% of our time and doing all the things I just mentioned with 40% of our time. That would be amazing. It would really help our elementary teachers who don't have that today. And it's the fundamental of any job. Do you have the time to do it right?
Totally agree. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit and do a fun question. And I want you to think about those mascots at those numerous schools you served, whether it be the Wildcat from Wild Lake or the Gator from Reservoir, or even the colleges and schools you went to yourself in Louisiana. And what is one mascot you wish you would have changed?
So many choices. I'm going to honor our friend Patrick Fischetti and say that the Reservoir Gators should have been the Reservoir Retrievers.
Boom.
So they could be the Reservoir Dogs.
The Reservoir Dogs. I know. Good dogs. I think Matt and I have actually, other disclosure to the people who are listening. Matt currently teaches the Reservoir, and that was the last school I was at before I moved into this new profession. And we think that's a great choice.
It's a really special place. If you don't know it, I think Reservoir is one of the most interesting, diverse, energetic buildings that I've ever really seen. Really good leadership there right now in Kareem Shortridge, and I've seen a number of really good leaders come through. I know you did too, Eric, but recently John DeFato and Richard Smart. It's like Wild Lake, which you also worked at.
Gosh, I have,
and Matt's wife. Like it's a nexus for educational improvement, and you don't think about it day in, day out when teachers are chasing each other around at the end of the year with socks trying to tag each other. But
these are the schools too that we talk about that have diverse populations, both racially and socioeconomically. And one of the misnomers is that, if you can get poor kids to go to school with rich kids, it'll be good for them. It's actually all the research shows it helps all the diverse groups equally to be with each other. And Wild Lake's a great example of that. And Reservoir is a great example of that.
Yeah, there's good research that says that in more equal societies, every strata of the society is actually healthier.
Yes.
And it works in schools exactly like you said. Everybody benefits.
Yep.
And we don't have to talk about the current president, but the idea that
as
that
little as possible, really.
less diversity is better, that's cuckoo birds.
Yep.
It is.
Well, thank
Paul,
you
thank
so
you.
much, Paul. We're toward the end from another episode of Brick and Mortar. Signing off.
Thank you, Paul, for being here. And thank you, those of you who are listening. We stay tuned, and we'll have another episode in a week or two.